Welcome back to AM Northwest. Our first guest specializes in treating chronic disease, and his new book will help us begin to heal ourselves. We welcome the author of The Serpent and the Butterfly, The 7 Laws of Healing, naturopathic Dr. Ben Reebs. Good morning, Ben. Tell me first about the inspiration for writing this book for you.
Yeah, Helen. So I really saw a need for a small book, a small practical book that really encapsulates all of the laws of healing in the body that we learn as naturopathic physicians, as integrative medicine practitioners. And so I wrote the 7 Laws of Healing.
One of the laws, it's the 7th law, so I'm going to go right to it, and it talks about the law of intention. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the law of intention really is probably the most important law, and all of science speaks to this law, gives an evidential basis now. We have hundreds and hundreds of studies. Our intention, our ability, or our being open to getting well, having the intention to get well, can actually have an impact on our health. And so by using the law of intention, not only as patients, but as doctors, we can actually impact the outcome of our health.
Okay, give me an example of how I set an intention to get better health.
Yeah, so I think a great example would be from like golf. Professional golfers are always visualizing their stroke. They're always visualizing, hitting the ball at a certain arc. And so I teach my patients to actually visualize themselves getting well. If they're struggling with a chronic issue, such as heart disease or diabetes, teaching them to visualize what it would look like for them to get well. And that actually helps them to dial in their intention, and we actually see a beneficial outcome.
Is it like, okay, so let's say someone has diabetes, do they visualize themselves eating healthier or doing something they would do if they didn't have diabetes? Give me a little bit more.
It all depends on the individual. So
okay.
It usually has to do with symptoms. Diabetes, oftentimes there are neuropathies,
right.
There's numbness and tingling in the legs, or maybe there's some hypertension. And so having them visualize what it would look like if those symptoms weren't there, and to see it, to feel it, to taste it. And we now know, based on the science, that whether it's placebo or not, we actually see better outcomes.
Interesting. At the end of each chapter, you end with this phrase, please fill in the blank. I'm grateful for my health because, and then there's blank. And tell me why that is important.
Yeah, so that kind of gets into this idea of gratitude and of being grateful for what we have. And again, studies show that when we're in a grateful state, the brain actually has electromagnetic activity, and certain portions of the brain get wakened that actually have a direct impact on our health. And so by kind of getting people to feel that, to think that, we can see benefit.
You talk about the law of vitality. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, the law of vitality it's really about this innate healing capacity that we have. Some call it the vital force. I think Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, about 2,500 years ago, coined this term. And so this law of vitality is that the body is always working to restore normal structure and function. And there are ways we can work with this innate healing capacity. There are also ways to work against it.
All right, the law of cure.
Yeah, so the law of cure is about how there are different ways that healing happens in the body, and we as trained naturopathic doctors can observe this in our patients. For example, things have a tendency to heal from the inside out, or in the reverse order in which the symptoms occurred. So when I have a patient in front of me, oftentimes the symptoms and the diseases that they've had that are newer, that maybe have happened in the last 6 months, will heal first before old chronic issues heal. And this tells me as a doctor that the patient is moving in that direction.
That's interesting. So that makes me think of sometimes we take a medication to deal with one issue, and that medication causes other symptoms, and we take a medication to deal with those issues.
Absolutely, and this actually kind of gets into the 4th law, the law of compensation, which is that every drug we take, we know they have side effects. So, for example, take like a proton pump inhibitor. We know that it lowers stomach acid so that we don't get heartburn, but it also downstream will lower things like magnesium and calcium in our bodies, and so we can end up with like osteoporosis. And so that would be an example of the law of compensation. And so we can take these different medications for different symptoms, but my job as a naturopathic doctor is to use these laws and educate my patients so that they know what may happen based on what they're doing.
Tell me about the law of resonance.
Yeah, so the law of resonance perhaps is the most woo-woo of all the laws. However, yeah, it comes really from physics and from, I love to use the example of musical instruments. If you put a guitar next to a violin and you pluck the strings of that guitar, the violin will begin to vibrate at the harmonics or the frequencies that it shares in common with the guitar. And this is just a basic law of science called resonance. Well, we as naturopathic physicians use this law in medicine all the time. There are certain plants, certain nutrients, certain modalities that have resonance with certain organs, certain tissues, and even certain diseases, as well as certain types of people. And so we can use this law to stimulate healing in the body.
Okay, tell me about the law of synergy. That's interesting to me.
Yes. So the law of synergy says that when we put two things together, they can have a much greater impact than just by themselves. And so basically the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And we as naturopathic doctors use this law all the time. For example, we know that when you combine turmeric with black pepper, all the science shows that these two plants or herbs will have a synergy that makes the anti-inflammatory effects of turmeric activated and that much more potent. And so herbalists, integrative health practitioners have been using this law of synergy for healing for decades. And now we're just beginning to get the science behind it.
And what about the law of disease?
Yeah, so the law of disease is one of the most important laws, and it basically says that all of disease is a kind of imbalance in the body that is due to basically three things: deficiency, toxicity, and not enough energy, not enough vitality. And so, or some combination of those three things. So when we begin to work with someone who has an imbalance or a disease, I, as a naturopathic doctor, am addressing where are they deficient, where are they toxic, and what is their vitality? And there are things we can do, like take nutrients, different supplements to address deficiency, as well as we can stimulate detoxification in the body to lower toxicities. And then the body, it'll awaken this innate healing capacity and people's symptoms can get better.
Interesting. Ben, thank you so much. We want to tell our audience the book again is called The Serpent and the Butterfly, The 7 Laws of Healing. Ben Reebs. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you so much, Helen.